Welcome, everyone. This is Trey Jadlow. I'm here on this third day of October 2016. Got a new friend here, Britlandt Abney. Is that how you say last name?
Abney, yeah.
Okay. And we had interacted several times in the past, and I've been trying to get him to a hangout, and he agreed to do one a few days ago, and then I couldn't figure out what the changes with the Hangouts, and I couldn't get it worked out, but today I finally figured out how it's basically the same thing, just go to a different place. So I contacted him, and he said he'd be willing to talk with me today. And so we're focusing on the problem of evil. He wanted to challenge me on that issue, and I said, that's fine, I'm happy to do that. I have to, usually I don't have bifocals, so I got bifocals now, so it's kind of messing with my eyes here. Anyway, so it's nice to meet you, Britt. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Are there any few facts, maybe what you do, if you're married, where you live, or anything like that?
Sure. So let's go in reverse order on that. I'm currently living in Palm Desert. We recently moved here. We were living in the Sacramento area until about June, and then we moved down here to the Coachella Valley. When I say we, I mean me and my wife. So yes, I'm married. Her name's Ellie. You'll probably see her walk through that white door just behind me at some point during this conversation. I am a potable water engineer, so I basically make sure that the water is clean and safe when it comes through your shower head and your sink. And related to our conversation in philosophy, I've watched several of your videos, Trey, so I know a little bit about you. Similar to you, I do have some formal education, but none of it is in philosophy. I have a bachelor's degree in environmental engineering, which is why I do the job. I got really interested in philosophy about 4 or 5 years ago and started picking it up as a hobby. Dug into it pretty deep as a habit or a hobby, but I have no formal training in that area. So you and me are pretty equally yoked, as the Christian might say.
Okay, good. That sounds great. I got dirty hands. I've only got 45 minutes. Usually I'll do this like for an hour or something. I only got 45 minutes. I forgot that my kids, so you know about me, and you know.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, well, I've got 6 children, and most of them are grown now. And my wife divorced me a few years ago. So I got the kids, 2 of my youngest kids, because they're not that young, but they're 18 and 13. But I didn't realize I was having them today. We kind of had to switch up. So when I said I want to do this hangout, I forgot that I had them, and I realized I do. So I got till like 5:30 or so. I'm sorry, 6:30. Yeah. So anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. You wanted to focus on the problem of evil. Now, can you hold a second? I'll let the dog in.
Sure.
Religiously speaking, I guess we didn't touch on that. You consider yourself an atheist or an agnostic or something like that?
I think that the way that I define my beliefs, most people would call me an atheist, yes, in the sense that I do not simply lack belief in God. I strongly believe that the God of classical theism is probably not existent.
Okay. And then did you have any religious upbringing?
Yeah, I was raised loosely as a Christian. I can't act like I was, super devoted. Our family was not the church every Sunday type. We were, but we did go to church on occasion. I have been to my fair share of church, and I did believe in God until I was about 14.
Okay.
Relatively familiar with Christian tenets, so.
And was it Protestant, Catholic, charismatic?
Fairly non-denominational.
Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. Good. All right. So let's go ahead and dive in then. Do you think that the problem of evil poses a problem for Christian belief or even theistic belief?
Yeah, I think that, well, yeah. So let me first say that there are many different formulations of the problem of evil, and I think that some of them are incredibly weak, arguably, fully defeated, whereas others are incredibly strong, and I don't really know of any sufficient counter to them in existence. I'd be happy if you were the first person to show me one, but I doubt it. I think that it poses an incredible problem for the God of classical theism. I don't think that it poses a problem at all for some other mythological religions like Nordic religions or Greek gods, etc. It's really only a problem for the God of classical theism.
You mean classical theism? You talking about Christianity or something, or?
Well, yes, the God of Christianity would be one of several gods that are gods of classical theism. Another one would be Allah. The Abrahamic religions are all based in gods of classical theism.
Okay. And what is your argument? You know what? Hold on, let me see if I can get. Hey, Tony. Tony. I'm sorry. Can you hold a second? Let me mute you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me get rid of the dog.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay, so what kind of problem do you think that I'm a born again Christian. I'm a Reformed Baptist.
Let me just kind of lay out like a fairly shortened version of what the argument basically states. So the God of classical theism is pretty much always described as omnipotence, omniscient, and omnibenevolence. There are other factors as well, but at a bare minimum, those are the factors that are considered in classical theism. So if he's omniscient, he knows everything. If he's omnipotent, then he can accomplish anything that he desires that is logically possible. And if he's omnibenevolent, then he will desire perfectly moral situations.
I don't know what you mean by omnibenevolent. I need some more flesh on that, because that's not classical theism. What I think I'm hearing you say.
Well, yes, classical theism.
What do you mean by goodness when you're saying omnibenevolence?
Right, and we can dig into those as we start to dig into the argument. Let me just lay out exactly where I see the problem coming in. So omnibenevolence is actually considered a common factor for pretty much all classical theism. I don't know of any philosophers that disagree with that, to be quite honest.
But what do you mean by that's what I'm trying to understand?
Perfectly moral, perfectly loving, perfectly good.
I mean, morality is just what people do. That God just does what he does, is what you're saying?
No, I would not say that God just does what he does. I would say that God is the type of being such that he would only fulfill perfectly moral outcomes. It would not just be a mere description of his nature in the sense that if God does it, it's moral. That seems to violate the dilemma that we're so familiar with.
Morality just means that's what people do. Ethics is where you have the framework of right and wrong. So are you saying that God has some moral framework that you're defining him, that he does not allow anything bad to happen as we would define it? I don't know what you mean by omnibenevolent. So
your differentiation of morality and ethics is not in line with everything that I have studied, but let's not get caught up in that. Let's go with your definition for a moment. You said that ethics is concerned with right and wrong. So under your definition,
well, it's determining right and wrong. Like you have the framework, and morality is the application of it. But truly, your morals and mores are pretty similar. It's just like how you apply those ethics. That's what your morals are.
So God would be perfectly ethical. That's under omnibenevolence then, by the way that you...
And what system of ethics are you holding to?
Right. So the problem of evil typically adopts the theistic system of ethics. It jumps into the worldview of the theist. It assumes the views of the theist, and then it shows that the views of the theist are incoherent. So it adopts your own ethical system.
Okay. Because my system is not inconsistent or incoherent, but I got a feeling that we're gonna trip up on that omnibenevolence you're talking about, because I think you don't understand what the biblical view is of.
Well, I mean, it's possible, but I very much doubt it. I maintain that the only way that you could actually deny some of the suffering that I'm going to raise is not or is in line with omnibenevolence would be pure naivety. But we'll get there. Okay. So, problem of evil. I like to adopt one that is very similar to Michael Tooley's probabilistic one. I don't adopt the logical problem of evil. In fact, I think that's a terrible argument. So the probabilistic problem of evil does not say that because evil exists, God cannot exist. What it says is that if enough copious and unjustified evil exists, it is likely that God does not exist. And for every additional scenario of copious or unjustified evil, it is more and more likely that God does not exist. Now, given our reality, we have tens of thousands of examples, some of which we could point to specifically, some of which we could describe more hypothetically, although they're very realistic. And so when you get tens of thousands of mounting evidences against God that would not be in tune with copious evil, it starts to look very bad. So the way that some people describe it is that the background evidence of the suffering of our reality is not in tune with what an omnibenevolent being would either want or even allow.
Okay, so suffering, for your perspective, then you would largely define suffering as sinful. Would that be a fair characterization?
Not necessarily. Unjustified suffering would be more accurate. So, for example, if you get a vaccine, right, and you get it in a shot, it hurts. That's suffering, but that's not unjustified suffering because, of course, you're protected from a disease that otherwise might kill you. So that's suffering, but that's obviously justified suffering. So there's nothing evil about that, and there's nothing that would be against an omnibenevolent being. It has to be a case of suffering where either the good that is derived from it is not equal to it, or that there's no good derived from it at all.
Okay, so suffering that diminishes the sanctity of existence is sinful. Would that be a fair way to put it?
Sinful, I guess, could be one way to describe it. The more apt way that I would describe it is it is against the nature of an omnibenevolent being.
Okay. So I'm trying to. So you're saying that in this world in which we live, objectively speaking, there is such a thing as evil. Right?
Yeah, I hate to use the word evil because this argument often goes down a path that's not relevant, where it turns into basically the moral argument, where the theist starts saying that the atheist has no grounding for morality, and I believe I do, but that's a whole other topic, and I don't want to get wrapped up into that. So I hate to use the word evil. What I like to say is copious suffering, and I would say that copious suffering is definitely against the nature of an omnibenevolent being. You can call that evil if you like. I don't really care. I just don't want to go down the path.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. You don't understand my view. I mean, you're building up a straw man and trying to knock it down. The Bible never said that suffering was incongruent with the nature of God. Have you never read the book of Job?
No. Not suffering, perhaps, but unjustified suffering, yes, very much.
Okay, and how do you know that suffering is unjustified?
Right, and so that's where the argument gets interesting. So the way that we formulate beliefs is we either have enough evidence such that we can conclude with a high degree of certainty that something is true or false, or we have enough evidence such that we can say that it is apparently some way or another. So there is much suffering within our universe that is apparently unjustified. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not justified. It just means that it is apparently unjustified in the sense that we know of no justification, like a child dying of bone cancer at 6 months. Maybe there's a justification for that. Absolutely. But we know of no such justification. So it is apparently unjustified. So if even a single scenario in our universe is actually unjustified, in other words, on eternity, there's no justification for it, then the God of classical theism definitely does not exist because he is incompatible with unjustified suffering. So out of all the tens of thousands of apparently unjustified suffering, if even one turns out to be actually unjustified, it proves he doesn't exist. If we give each of those apparently unjustified suffering accounts a 50-50 chance because we don't know one way or another whether it is unjustified or isn't, then it's each 50-50. But if you compile a 50-50 chance and have to say that every single one of them is in fact justified, then the probability of God existing turns out to be like 0.000000001%, probably more zeros in there. So the problem is you can't just justify some suffering. The theist has to justify every single instance of apparently unjustified suffering in history, or God doesn't exist. And
absolutely. I mean, I don't see why that's such a conundrum to you. I mean, if there's one maverick molecule outside of God's sovereignty, then God is not.
Right.
I mean, I don't understand what's so compelling about your argument. The question is, how do you know It's unjustified. How big are you in relation to the universe? I mean, how big is your knowledge in view of the universe?
Right, so that's kind of a burden shift, because what's going on here is that the evidence makes it such that this suffering appears to be unjustified. So you can't say, oh, it might be justified. That's an appeal to ignorance. You have to actually provide explicit justification for every single one of them. You can't just say it might be, or obviously it is because that's God's nature. That's an appeal to ignorance. You have to actually show evidence that it's justified. I don't have to show that it's not. I just have to show that the cumulative probabilistic case makes it
Brett,
very unlikely that it is.
Okay, Brett, you don't seem to understand something, that the very idea that there's such a thing as evil requires a God.
See, that's why I didn't want to go down the evil route. Suffering doesn't require that there's a God. So let's just stick with the suffering.
No, you don't understand. You're presupposing that suffering is sinful. Now, I use that word sinful to point out what you're saying. Is it objectively bad?
I am not saying that it's sinful. I'm saying that it's against the nature.
Is it objectively bad?
It doesn't matter. You do not have to answer that. You do not have to answer that question for this argument to hold forth.
Yes, you do.
No, you absolutely do not. Unjustified suffering.
So if there's unjustified suffering and God is not, then is there such a thing as evil and suffering?
It does not matter. That is not pertinent to the argument.
Sophomore.
No, that is not pertinent to the argument, Trey. Trey, unjustified suffering is mutually exclusive with the nature of an omnibenevolent being. Whether that is evil or not,
I can tell you know that you lost.
Trey, is this really the only counter that you're going to give me?
Yeah, you haven't given me a problem.
I absolutely have.
You never even got off the ground, my friend.
Really? That's it? I mean, I give you this problem that has absolutely no counter, and you just laugh?
You're opposing a standard which requires a God in order to say that there's no God. You can't do that. You can't steal the foundation of your complaint in order to say it.
The standard does not suppose that there's a God.
If there is no God, is there anything to complain about?
Well, there's still suffering.
Is that bad?
Doesn't matter. You don't seem to be grasping this, Trey. You don't seem to be grasping the problem.
I'm not smart enough.
No, I think that you're plenty smart. I just think that you're not trying to really embrace how problematic this is for your worldview.
This is why, Britt, I have been trying to get you for so long to do a hangout, and you wouldn't do it because you just play games and text. And you're dishonest and you play games, and this is why, because you don't have a leg to stand on. You love your atheism, but you don't have a good sharp mind for it. And I'm not saying you're stupid, I'm just saying your argument is silly.
Well, then please show me how unjustified suffering is compatible with an omnibenevolent being, because definitionally
Tell me how
that's
suffering is a bad thing without God.
I don't have to. Trey, you don't understand. A bachelor can't be married in the same way that unjustified suffering cannot be existent with an omnibenevolent being. Evil doesn't have to enter that picture. Okay? They're not compatible.
Okay, unjustified suffering, whatever. Just unjustified suffering is evil. Unjustified suffering is sin. You don't like those words, but you're using the same concept and putting a different label on it. Right?
If you would like to use those labels, that's fine. I don't have to, though, because either way, it's incompatible with an omnibenevolent nature. They can't.
Like I said, you misdefine what omnibenevolence is. In other words, let me ask you this. Listen, let me ask you this, Britt. Have you ever been through a difficulty in your life and you look back on it and said, that was good for me?
Yeah, sure, but that's going down the appeal to ignorance route.
Well, no, I'm saying all I'm trying to establish is that sometimes, have you ever been to a movie where evil has not been the very reason the movie was made, the triumph of evil? The struggle, and in the end, goodness triumphs over evil?
Absolutely, I see your point.
No movie, unless it's a documentary or something like that, even that's going to have elements in it. That's why we go to the movie, so we can see this struggle. It's a part of the existence that we're in. You ever heard somebody say they had something bad happen in their life? They're saying, I'm glad that happened to me because it made me a better person.
Right, so are you suggesting then that all of the struggles that we currently see might be justified in some way we don't know in the future?
Well, yes. Well, actually, yes, because from a Christian perspective, everything is done for God's glory.
Right, so
And
that's an appeal to ignorance because you don't know that it's justified, yet you're believing that
so
it is
wait a minute.
for no apparent reason.
What do you know of anything with certainty? Tell me that.
I don't. I don't
You
have
know
to.
nothing of certainty, right?
Right.
Okay, anybody who is a contingent being must live by faith. We do not have certainty. We cannot have certainty. Okay.
Okay, but you
So
don't
if you're
have
saying
any
I must
level
have
of
certainty, therefore it's not true, it's a silly statement.
No, no, no. It's not that you have to have 100% certainty. You have to have at least some certainty. You have no certainty that these evils are going to be justified in the future. You have no reason to think that other than your faith.
It's based upon God. Do you see that? You're assuming him in order to say that it must be right or wrong, otherwise it's not. And if there's no God, you're still going to complain that suffering is bad, aren't you?
So essentially, there are, let's just throw out a number. Let's say there are 100,000 instances of apparently unjustified suffering. And essentially, you're just going to say, well, I have faith in God, so I know that those are all justified in
There is
eternity.
not one unjustified suffering. And what it's going to do is going to go back to an ontological argument, which you do not want to argue with me. But every single argument goes back to an ontological argument.
Provide justification for all of them then. That is your burden. If you can't do it, you've lost.
Just provide a justification for all of them. What do you mean? How would that work?
Every single unjustified suffering in history has to be
What do you mean by unjustified suffering? It doesn't exist.
Oh, okay. So what's the justification for children that die from bone cancer? Provide it, please.
God's glory.
God's glory. And you can actually quantify and say that that turns out more good than bad.
And yes, because the very fact that if there were no evil, there would be no such.
You can do that? No philosopher ever has. How are you doing that?
Well, I just did. I just said that God.
Trey, you did not. You just claimed it. You have to show that, Trey.
I don't understand what you're saying. You're saying that children dying of, did you say bone cancer?
Yeah.
Is a bad thing.
It's apparently unjustified in the sense that we know of no justification for it.
Well, indeed we do. We know that God receives glory through justice. There is no justice unless there's such a thing as evil. Tell me this.
You're then
if
claiming that God had to make exactly the amount of evil that we see today. It was logically necessary for him to make all that evil for the justice that he derives from it.
If he does not, then there is no existence.
So let me ask you a question, Trey. Let's go down a hypothetical route for just a moment. Let's say that 1,000 children a year die from bone cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that creates evil, as you call it, and God derives justice from the evil, and God derives glory from the justice, right? That's your view. If
by the expression of justice and of mercy in light of sin.
Now let's go down another hypothetical route and say in some other world, only 999 children died this year instead of 1,000. Are you saying that God could not have achieved the same level of justice and glory from 999 deaths as he did from 1,000?
So you're conceding the point. You're just saying
no. I'm saying. Are you saying that? Please, yes or no. Are you saying that?
I am saying that the way that the things are must be according to God's glory. This is the way that it must bring him more glory. Otherwise, he's
not even one less child could have died. Otherwise, he couldn't have gotten this glory.
No, not according to from his ad intra, his perspective as he is in his being.
That doesn't sound like omnipotence, Trey. That doesn't sound very powerful at all.
Really? I didn't say that. I said that he ordained it, did I not? How does that affect omnipotence?
If he's omnipotent and he gets X glory from 1,000 children dying, but he can't get X glory from 999 children dying, that's not omnipotence. He's limited by something. Why can't he get the same amount of glory from one less death? He's limited.
No, omnipotence means that God is omnipotent in all the things that God can do. God cannot exist and not exist at the same time in the same relationship. That's not omnipotence. Or God cannot forget something, because that's a sign of a weakness. To say that God doesn't do it the way that you think that he should, therefore he's not omnipotent.
Nothing to do with what I said. I think he should.
You're making the hypothesis, are you not?
I am making a hypothesis, yes. So God can't derive X justice and glory from one less death. What's he limited by?
I am not saying that um, he is limited by saying that because it's a different way, it's not because it doesn't go a different way. Therefore, God is unable to do it. I don't understand how that's.
Okay, let me try and lay it out in a different way, because I think we're talking past each other a little bit. If 1,000 kids die, and that gives God 100 units of glory, let's just make it easy and add arbitrary numbers to this, and 999 kids die, and he can't get 100 units from glory from that. That means he either wanted 1,000 kids to die, which means he's not omnibenevolent.
Okay,
or,
that's the point right there. You misunderstand what omnibenevolence is.
No, hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
Or he can't derive the same glory from 999 deaths, which means he's limited by something. Omnipotence means you're not limited by anything except the laws of logic.
Or his
There's
being.
No way around
He's
it.
determined by who he is.
Then that must be logically necessary according to your beliefs, because omnipotence means you are not limited by anything except the laws of logic. If you think he's determined by his nature, then you think that
well, I'm saying his nature has a
necessary.
certain definition to it. And like I said, he cannot be and not be at the same extent. He can't be.
That's fine. That doesn't get you out of the argument, though.
I'm sorry?
That's fine. It doesn't help you, though. He's either limited or not omnibenevolent. There's no way around it.
This whole conversation, Britlandt, has been centered around omnibenevolent. You make a definition of it that I say is a straw man, and then try to say that it cannot be.
Agree on.
I'm sorry?
I didn't make it up. It's the definition that all philosophers agree on. This is an academic definition, not Britt's definition.
I am looking for a biblical definition, not what anybody else said.
Well, okay. Perhaps then Trey,
Britt,
I want to entertain the thought that perhaps you do not believe in the God of classical theism, but rather you believe in some different biblical God that only you believe in. Because what I'm talking about right now is well agreed upon God of classical theism. If you think that the God of the Bible doesn't fit that, then you're not a classical theist.
No, I think what classical theism teaches is that God, according to good, is according to God's nature. Ultimately,
that's not what it teaches.
It means that he doesn't hurt anybody. That's what omnibenevolence means.
No, I've never said that either.
Okay, then what do you say?
Omnibenevolence means that you are all loving, you are all good, you only ensure the most moral scenarios possible.
Okay, so does a most moral scenario mean that there's no suffering?
No, of course not.
Okay, then what does it mean?
It means that there's only exactly as much suffering as is required and not an ounce more. So that puts the burden on you to prove that that is what exists in our world. Can you prove that? You have to prove that the amount of suffering in our world is not an ounce more than it has to be for this moral. That's your burden, not mine.
No. The burden for you is an ontological burden to say that somehow that there can be such a thing as evil or suffering or whatever. You're saying it's wrong, are you not? Are you defining suffering as wrong? Gratuitous suffering, wrong.
No, I'm not defining it as wrong, no.
Okay, what are you defining it as? Because it's really just a word game.
I'm defining it as mutually exclusive with an omnibenevolent nature.
Okay, but omnibenevolence would not allow any suffering, right?
No. I've said like 3 times that it would allow suffering if it was logically necessary or it brought about some greater good. It would not allow copious suffering.
And okay, then you've just sold the farm. Because it's your burden to say that the idea of evil exists without a moral lawgiver.
Mm-mm.
You don't see that?
No, I do not have to do that. No.
So you said there is no God, right?
Sure.
Okay. In your world in which you live, is it bad for babies to die of bone cancer?
Define bad.
What you tell me? What word would you use to describe that?
Yeah, I think it's bad, but I hold to moral realism, and that's a whole nother discussion. So I do think that's bad.
No, it's not. You need to justify your moral realism. That's what I'm saying. You're
no,
assuming my position.
No, because I've adopted your moral background to prove this argument. I've adopted your ethical system, or not yours necessarily, that of classical theism.
Okay, well, my ethical system hasn't been challenged here, but yours has.
The gods of classical theism has. So if that's not yours,
no, it hasn't.
Yes, it has. Absolutely, very clearly, Trey. Come on. It's been challenged. Not only has it been challenged, but you have no refutation. Trey, you have to justify every single instance of suffering in history.
And I say it's justified. I have no problem with that. I don't
That's fine. That's
understand
your claim.
what
Now
am I
provide the
supposed to do?
evidence. What is
I'm
the
sorry?
evidence for your claim? You've claimed that they're all justified. Now provide the evidence.
What would the evidence be?
I don't know. That's your burden.
Oh, so you're saying provide evidence. I don't even know what the evidence is, but you lose because you can't provide it. Is that what you're saying?
I know of no way to justify all suffering.
Okay, then stop
but
complaining. Tell me what I need to do.
you seem to have such faith that it is justified, and yet I know of no way that that's even possible. How could you justify it?
Because there can be no complaining unless there is a standard.
No, you seem to not understand the difference between the suffering argument and the logical problem of evil. It's a common misconception on theists' part, so I don't blame you too much, but you do seem confused. I don't have to assert evil, Trey. It's okay. Suffering is
You are saying,
not...
and that's another thing, you're saying that my view is inconsistent, and therefore inconsistency is wrong. Are you saying that?
No, I'm saying that the only possible way for you to justify your theistic view, if you subscribe to classical theism, is to give explicit justification for every single suffering instance in history.
And
if you
what
can't
I
give
don't understand, the very fact that God is, and there is such a thing as justification, justifies every single act. And also, we need to remember that sin came into the world by way of Adam and Eve, but then we've got to go back to that and say, how did that happen without his ordaining it anyway? So it's really kind of a moot point, but it is important to remember that sin entered the world through our federal head, Adam and Eve.
All sin.
I'm sorry?
All sin?
All sin, yes.
So you think that
I'm saying
that the suffering caused...
You
think that the suffering
from Adam. In other words, your desire to be unkind to someone came from your federal head, Adam.
So what about suffering in the world that's not contingent on human beings in any way?
Well, the entire cosmos was thrown into entropic state at the sin of Adam and Eve.
The sin of Adam and Eve caused suffering
Entropy.
from earthquakes?
Yes.
Really? That's a bold claim.
Do you believe in entropy?
I do, yeah.
Okay. Now, entropy presupposes a starting point, does it not?
It presupposes a point of expansion, if that's what you mean by starting point.
Yeah, that's called the Big Bang. That's what I call creation.
Okay.
Okay.
Where are you going with that?
Well, I'm just saying. Well, I was just merely pointing out that a part of the equation.
Here's the thing, Trey. You say that all of suffering comes from the sinful nature of Adam. That's fine. That's a claim, though. That's not evidence. You have to provide now external evidence showing a connection between Adam's sinful nature and all suffering.
And I asked my friend Britt, is it wrong for babies to die of bone cancer?
Yes.
Okay. You got your evidence? Are we done?
I have tens of thousands of pieces of evidence that mount against your God, Trey. And you don't have a single...
Really? Tell me, how do you derive your existence apart from my God, since you're a contingent creature?
See, we agreed on this, Trey. We're not going back to...
Yeah, I know. I said every argument's going back to ontological argument. You said, I don't want to argue that because you know you have no argument. But the moral argument is based upon an ontological argument.
That's a nice claim for someone who wants to hide behind the argument that they know that they're strongest in, but that's simply not the case.
Is that a concession?
I think that you're very good at arguing contingent existence.
It's because I'm a weasel. It's because I'm good with tricks, right? That's what they always say.
No, I don't think you're good with tricks. I think that...
What's that?
I think that you're a very confident speaker, and I think that you're very confident on one topic, and you try to make every topic about that, but it's simply not the case.
No. It is everything, Britt. If we're going to talk about, you're going to say there is no God, you're looking at an ontological, existential reality that you assume, and you say it doesn't exist. You know that bad exists, but then you want to say, but it exists.
But I'm an atheist moral realist, so I think that bad exists external to God. Yes.
And moral realists cannot justify existence apart from something that gives sanctity to existence.
Something, yes, but not necessarily someone.
Britt, is your life special?
I think so. My mom thinks so.
Okay, so you've been determined to think that your life is special, right? Wouldn't you say
I'm
that
not a
all human
determinist.
beings are imbued with a program of thinking life is special?
No, not all. I think that most humans tend to think that.
Well, if they don't, they're broken, right? That's how you view
Yeah,
them.
they tend to be very sad. They tend to be very depressed. Yeah.
Yeah, like axe murderers are very sad and depressed. We put them in jail, right? Because they're broken.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're sociopaths, right? Yeah.
Okay, sociopath is a negative term, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the idea that uh, that we are programmed, we are determined with the sanctity of existence. I want to ask you, where does that come from? Because Darwinian evolution has no efficient cause, it has no efficiency, it has no purpose. Yet you're saying there's this really
Oh.
big purpose in us.
Oh, I very much. Well, first of all, you're playing an equivocation fallacy there. First, you said a sense of purpose. Then you said an actual purpose.
No,
Which
no,
one do you want
it
me to
doesn't
answer?
matter. Either one, purpose, schmurpose, any kind of value whatsoever. Whether you value or there's value in an apple or anything, if there is value, you must have an objective value or a self-existent value, or otherwise there is no value because you violate the law of identity.
I think that you're confused on the terminology there. Value, by definition, is a subjective existence.
That's right.
Value is created
And
by
when I say
minds.
objective, I'm talking about a subject that does not change. That would be God.
I don't see how God creating value would make it objective. It's still a mind. That still
No, I'm
sounds
saying the very
subjective to
fact
me.
that we exist tells that there is teleology, there's value, because otherwise we would not exist, because our existence is contingent. Dependent existence must be valuable, otherwise it would not have been created.
Why could not our minds have evolved to create value ourselves? I don't see a
Because
problem with
at
that.
some point in time, you had to violate the law of identity. You had to say that what you're saying is that unintentionality intended intentionality into existence, and you violated the law of identity.
No. I'm saying that unintent. Well, that's a little bit misleading, but I'm saying that did not previously have intentionality could formulate in such a way such that intentionality could emerge from them, and there's nothing wrong with that.
So, but you're saying the previous state was unintentional, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes and no. Particles aren't really unintentional. They're just more like a-intentional. They have no reference to
That's right.
intentionality one way or
A
another.
intentionality intended intentionality, right?
No, it formed in such a way that intentionality emerged from it. It didn't intend it. It
That's just
emerged.
the magic that violates the law of identity.
What? How so?
You're saying, all you're just saying is, that's like people say, I say, why do you as an evolutionist, why do you value existence? And they say, well, this is so funny, I always get the same thing. It's because that's the creatures we are. And I'm saying, no, I'm not asking you just to say it's just that way. It's a just so story. It's not Rudyard Kipling hour here. We're looking for justification.
Let me ask you a question, Trey. So you realize that the chemicals that make up our body are the exact same chemicals that make up a rock or this coffee cup, right?
Yes.
Right, exact same chemicals. So when they're formulated in this way, they make a coffee cup. When they're formulated in the way that we are, they make a living creature, right?
Yes.
By a similar argument that you just made, we are violating the law of identity by saying that dead matter produced life.
Yeah, but you're presupposing materialism, which leads to determinism. Are you a determinist?
I'm not a determinist, and I'm not presupposing materialism there. I'm recognizing the fact that we are made from molecules arranged in a certain way.
Okay, so you believe that you have free will?
I'm a compatibilist, but yeah.
Okay, all right, you're a compatibilist. Does your coffee cup make art museums?
Not that I've seen it doing.
Okay, so you're a different category than coffee cups, right? In that sense.
I'm just arranged differently.
Coffee cups don't value, right?
I'm just arranged differently. The
That's
molecules
right.
in my
And you're arranged in such a way that you value things, and your coffee cup does not value things.
Right, correct.
Okay, so you are a different category, a taxonomy from coffee cups or grass, a blade of grass or something like that. You are somehow special because coffee cups don't think, oh, I don't want to die. But
I am
Brit
special.
does.
I am special subjectively. There's nothing
That's
objective.
Right. You have value. You're a valuing creature, and you think that your being is valuable, which the chemicals somehow don't have that personhood. Where did that personhood come from? Because you cannot transmit something which you do not possess.
Again, I think that you're getting to consciousness at this point. I think that consciousness is an emergent property of the way that
Yeah,
your
that's what you're just
mind.
saying. It's magic. That's all you do. You're saying it's magic. I don't know how it happened. It doesn't make sense, but I'm going to accept it by blind irrational faith. That's what you're telling me.
Emergent properties are magical.
You're not giving me a justification. You're just saying that's just the way it is.
I'm asking you, do you think emergent properties are magical?
I think emergent properties where you have unintentionality, not all emergent properties. I'm saying emergent properties, what you're talking about, where unintentionality gives forth intentionality. Yes.
Yeah. You think that's a violation of the law of identity?
Indeed, it is. Because what you're saying that unintentionality is intentionality.
No,
At
I'm
some
saying
point in
that
time.
I'm saying that unintentional molecules can form in such a way that intentionality can emerge from that. That's
That's
not
right.
magical.
So unintentionality gives rise to intentionality, right?
Yeah.
Positively.
There's nothing incoherent about that at all.
You're saying that unintentionality is intentionality.
No, I'm saying it can give rise to it in certain formulations.
That's
right. That's very different.
That's right. So at some point in time, we see this
Wait, hold on. What I just said is very different than what you just said. Do you understand that?
No.
Unintentionality is intentionality is very different than unintentional molecules arranged in a certain way can give emergence to intentionality. Those two claims are very different, worlds apart.
All right.
Your claim is incoherent. Mine is not.
No, it's not. It's completely incoherent. So do you think emergent properties are concerned about the law of identity or corresponding with the law of identity?
Well, everything in reality is concerned with the law of identity in the sense that it obeys it.
So that your coffee cup is worried about whether it is making propositions that correspond to reality.
What do you mean? Are you using worried colloquially or literally?
Anyway,
it's not worried about it in the sense that it has, a mind that's stressing about it. No.
So the material is different than mind, which is corresponding to the law of non-contradiction, which is immaterial and objective. Are the laws of thought objectively true, and are they immaterial?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you justify that in a materialistic sense? They're products of a mind.
They're descriptive.
Okay, but they really do exist. I'm not saying like I'm not trying to reify them.
No, I don't think that it's fair to say that descriptive laws exist. I think entities exist. I don't think it's fair to say that descriptive.
But the way that they relate to each other is guided by a principle, right?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, so when you predicate scientifically, you don't care whether it follows the law of non-contradiction, what you're positing.
No, I very much do care.
Okay. So there are these laws that govern all the existence that we have, and they are immaterial.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, again, it depends what you mean by govern. They do not guide them in the sense that they're pushing them or directing them. It's just a description of the way that those things behave.
Yes, but they must follow these laws. Otherwise, you have chaos.
Yeah, again, it depends on what you mean by must. They do follow those laws. They always do.
No, they don't. Have you ever made an incoherent statement? I just did it. I didn't follow the law.
That was nonsensical.
I
that
chose not to.
I'm not sure where you're going with this.
Well, I'm trying to get you to see that there's no justification for your view.
It sounds like what you're doing is you're employing this like supernaturalism of the gaps thing, where because you don't fully understand how intentionality could come from certain formulations of molecules, you think that it's impossible, and therefore you must invoke some magical force.
Well, no, I employ the laws of logic. I employ the law of identity.
Laws of logic do not show any issue with what I said. None. You keep saying that it does, but you can't show it.
What do you think about ex nihilo?
What
do you think about ex nihilo nihil fit?
The creation from something from nothing.
Could you believe something can come from nothing?
It's funny. I was just talking to my friend John about that. I'm inclined to think that that's probably not possible. I'm not real decided on but probably
it's not probable. Again, it's a law of non-contradiction. You know what?
No, not necessarily because. Okay. It was wonderful talking with you, Trey. I very much enjoyed this. If you would like to pick this up
Well,
another time, I would be happy
no,
to.
we are going to pick this up again. Absolutely,
Good,
I'd be delighted to pick this up because we've
good.
only just begun, and I enjoy having a banter of such. Um, Much more challenging than when I first started. I thought, oh no, and I think you brought up some good points, and it's fun to work through those things. So so hopefully now you won't be so shy, and we can do our hangouts. Are you you got your Hollywood debut there, and so now you'll be looking in the mirror hoping something great will happen in the future. I'm just teasing. But we'll get together again, and actually probably pretty soon, and we'll pick up this conversation where we started.
Wonderful, Trey. Have a good rest of your night with your kids.
Okay, greetings to your wife.
Bye.
All right, see you. Bye.